This is unreal. Oh my God. My house is I literally just built all of this.
Oh my God. Oh God, it's gone.
The ongoing LA fires are among the most destructive in California's history, burning thousands of houses and buildings in just a matter of days. Many individuals are being forced to evacuate, countless are losing their homes, and some, tragically, are losing their lives. It's a devastating situation that not everyone will be able to recover from quickly. Sadly, as impactful as this is for everyone affected, the suffering of victims is far from equal. This isn't surprising, given the long-standing gap between the rich, the middle class, and the poor. However, crises like these are even harder to endure when you live in a country that has excluded you for decades simply because of your skin color. Yes. Today we're going to talk about how an entire Black community is essentially being left abandoned in the fires, all because of the country's deeply rooted systemic and racial biases. So please hit that like button to help spread the word, and let's get started.
So the firefighters said that you're basically not on the list right now?
They said they had a list of places to go. They're spread thin. I understand. I really understand.
Yeah, I know, but so you're just begging somebody, if anybody's got water and can help?
I'm begging anyone to help put out this fire.
As the fires rage on, communities across Los Angeles County are being devastated. Thousands of homes, businesses, and structures have already been reduced to rubble. Among the hardest hit areas is Altadena, a town rich in history and culture, where an impressive 81% of Black families are homeowners. This figure, almost double the national average for Black homeownership, speaks volumes about the perseverance and determination of its residents. But as flames continue to engulf this community, the cracks in the system are becoming all too visible.
Come on, guys! We gotta go!
Hi. Just be okay. You're gonna be okay. Hi. You're gonna be okay.
Altadena wasn't always a haven for Black families. In fact, up until the 1950s and 60s, it was predominantly white. Back then, discriminatory practices like redlining kept Black families from purchasing homes in desirable areas. Banks outright denied loans to Black families or attached sky-high interest rates to make home ownership impossible. Meanwhile, white families moved freely into neighborhoods with better schools, safer streets, and more opportunities. But in Altadena, change came during the Civil Rights era. As laws against segregation began to gain traction, Black families finally had a chance to carve out a space for themselves. It wasn't easy. They faced resistance from neighbors who didn't want them there, unfair lending practices, and even threats. Despite this, many Black families worked tirelessly to build a life in Altadena, often pooling resources, passing down homes through generations, and creating a tight-knit community that supported one another. This sense of community is what made Altadena so special. Over time, it became a symbol of generational wealth and opportunity for Black families, a place where families could pass down their homes and create stability for future generations. But as the fires continue to sweep through Altadena, more than just buildings are being lost. Families who have spent decades building their lives are now watching everything turn to ash. Many of these Black families are underinsured or not insured at all because the rising cost of wildfire premiums has priced them out of adequate coverage. And even those with policies are discovering that they don't cover the full cost of rebuilding, leaving them stranded without the financial safety net they need. And mind you, this isn't their fault. The harsh reality is that the challenges these Black families are now facing stem from a system historically designed to benefit white families at the expense of others. Decades of systemic racism embedded in housing, lending, and insurance policies have left black families struggling to access the same opportunities and protections readily available to white families. Take insurance as an example. For decades, insurance companies used neighborhood demographics to determine risk, a method deeply tied to the practice of redlining. Historically, black families were relegated to neighborhoods that insurers labeled as high risk, simply because of the racial makeup of the area. This meant higher premiums or outright denial of coverage, while white families in predominantly white neighborhoods enjoyed lower costs and better policies. Even after redlining was outlawed through the Fair Housing Act of 1968, its legacy persisted. Black neighborhoods, historically underfunded and neglected, continue to be classified as risky, while predominantly white neighborhoods benefit from economic stability and investment. In more recent years, as wildfire risk increased due to climate change, insurance companies began withdrawing from high-risk areas like Altadena altogether. In California, nearly 350,000 homeowners lost insurance coverage between 2015 and 2020 due to rising wildfire risks, according to the California Department of Insurance. This disproportionately impacts black families because they often lack the generational wealth or disposable income needed to pay for soaring premiums or to self-insure their homes. White families, by contrast, often have access to wealth accumulated over generations, whether through property ownership, investments, or other assets, which gives them more options to secure coverage or rebuild independently. Systemic inequities in income and employment opportunities make it harder for black families to build financial safety nets. Studies have consistently shown that the median black household in the U.S. holds significantly less wealth compared to the median white household. For example, data from the Federal Reserve's 2022 Survey of Consumer Finances revealed that the median wealth of white families was $285,000, compared to just $44,900 for black families. Even when black households earn similar incomes to their white counterparts, their wealth remains lower, largely due to historical barriers to wealth-building opportunities, such as redlining, discriminatory lending practices, and exclusion from programs like the GI Bill. In Altadena, this means that many families have put everything they have into their homes, one of the few ways they can build generational wealth. This means that, for them, losing that home in the fire is both a financial loss and a generational setback. And when these families turn to the system for help, they often encounter more barriers. Federal and state relief programs often require extensive documentation, an issue for families whose records may have been lost in the fire. Plus, the application process itself can be complex and time-consuming, which favors those with the time, resources, and knowledge to handle the bureaucracy. So while the fire has already destroyed multiple homes and lives, treatment and support towards the victims are certainly not equal. Celebrities and other wealthier victims already have resources that most Altadena families could only dream of. Many of them are hiring private firefighters at exorbitant rates, sometimes as high as $2,000 an hour, to protect their properties during the blaze. This additional layer of protection ensures that their homes are prioritized for care and receive attention unavailable to ordinary residents. While black families and other minorities are left to shoulder the burdens of an unequal system, wealthier individuals have the means to mitigate their losses swiftly. This lack of financial protection is forcing many families in Altadena to rely on grassroots support and mutual aid to meet even their most basic needs. Community donation hubs, volunteer cleanup efforts, and GoFundMe campaigns have become lifelines for affected residents. In fact, a report from the Pew Charitable Trusts highlights that crowdfunding platforms like GoFundMe have increasingly become a safety net for families in disaster-stricken areas, with more than $9 billion raised globally for emergencies in the last 5 years. However, these efforts, while noble, are no substitute for the systemic support that wealthier individuals can easily access. The family of 57-year-old Kenneth Snowden was one of the black families able to purchase a home in 1962. That house, as well as the one Snowden bought almost 20 years ago, are both gone. Snowden wants the ability to acquire home loans with 0% interest. He is challenging state and federal officials to help all fire-affected communities fairly.
Give us the ability to rebuild, restart our lives. Your $40 million home is no different than my $2 million home. If you can spend billions of dollars fighting a war, you can spend $1 billion to help us get back where we were at,
he said. As bad as these already sound, systematic inequality is not the only hassle that these victims are currently facing. The fire is also amplifying fears of gentrification, which occurs when a neighborhood's environment changes as wealthier people move in. While families in Altadena are still sifting through ashes and ashes, real estate developers are moving in like vultures, eager to buy up their burnt properties. The goal of these developers is to replace historic single-family homes with high-priced luxury developments that would be too expensive and out of reach for most longtime residents. Sean Brown, a black homeowner and founder of a local charter school destroyed in the fire, spoke passionately about the threat to her community. I would tell them to stand strong, rebuild, and continue the generational progress of African Americans. This is truly a huge challenge given that many of these families are now under great pressure to sell their land quickly in exchange for short-term financial relief. Portia Large, whose grandmother's home was reduced to rubble, expressed similar fears. Her grandmother's house was more than just a home. It was history, a place where multiple generations grew up and neighbors were always welcome. For families like hers, selling would mean not just losing property, but erasing a legacy built over decades. Developers are already offering quick cash to families who are still reeling from their losses. Many residents feel insulted by these offers, which are being presented while smoke still lingers in the air. As journalist Sonali Kolhatkar put it,
"The embers haven't even gone cold. The smoke is still rising and the developers are circling."
Sadly, this predatory behavior is not new. Disasters have long been followed by what Canadian author Naomi Klein famously called disaster capitalism. This concept refers to the exploitation of crises by private entities to acquire assets cheaply, often at the expense of vulnerable communities. Altadena's black community, which has already faced decades of systemic inequities, now finds itself at the crossroads of recovery and gentrification. I assure everyone watching this now that the more you know about how great Altadena was, the more outraged you'd be. It's impossible to talk about Altadena's greatness without acknowledging the contributions of its notable residents. The town was home to legendary individuals like Octavia Butler, whose science fiction works opened minds to issues of race, identity, and survival, and Jackie Robinson, who broke barriers in Major League Baseball and became a symbol of perseverance and change. Rodney King, whose story brought attention to police brutality and systemic injustice, was also part of Altadena's great history. Walking through Altadena before the fire was like walking through a living history book. Its streets were lined with single-family homes that housed generations of families. Some of these homes dated back decades, passed down through the years as a way to preserve not only wealth but also family legacies. The fire threatens to erase the essence of what makes Altadena special. Generations of memories, cultural heritage, and progress are being reduced to ash in just a matter of days. Families who have spent decades building a life there are now suddenly left with nothing. Churches that serve as cornerstones of faith and community were gone, leaving a void that no amount of rebuilding could easily fill. Without meaningful intervention, Altadena's history risks being overwritten by gentrification and systemic neglect. Victoria Knapp, chair of the Altadena Town Council, fears that the fires are permanently altering the community for these families. Someone is going to buy it and develop who knows what on it. And that is going to change the character of Altadena, Knapp said, adding that those with fewer resources are being disproportionately hurt. But Altadena's future isn't set in stone. Despite the ongoing devastation, many of Altadena's residents are determined to rebuild. A spreadsheet listing GoFundMe links for over 600 families is circulating online, sparking hope that fellow Americans will step up to support these efforts. There's still hope if communities and leaders work together to ensure fair rebuilding efforts that protect Altadena's residents and the town's history and culture. Thank you for staying until the end of this narrative. If you found this story important, please give this video a thumbs up and share it to spread awareness about what's happening in Altadena. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that shine a light on the voices and communities often left unheard. Together we can make a difference. See you in the next video.